Jason Ross, Carmichael Dave, and Frankie Cartoscelli. Frankie, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jason, and I'm sure Dave in a moment. And Kyle. Good morning, guys. Happy Monday.
Bring the boom. That's what we do.
I thought we'd get by that with Verlaud being gone, but I should have known.
Not while it's just you and Jason together.
I should have known
We do
better.
bring the boom. We do bring the boom.
Do we?
Dave, say hi to Frankie.
Hey, Frankie.
Hi, Dave. How you doing, man?
Been better, been worse. How are you?
I think same. But Kings basketball tonight, so there we go.
Kings Hawks. Right here, Sactown Sports. You got to witness history. How'd that feel?
Pretty. I think we're all kind of still trying to grasp what happened. Had a lot of family in for that game, and some not really privy to what a 60-point game means. Had to explain, that is not something you're probably going to see again. But I think that 24-hour period is kind of just a reminder of. I think De'Aaron Fox, as any sports star, is going to be on the receiving end of some criticism sometimes, or some negative comments. I think that right now, at a time where the Kings are really playing with bare bones here, it's kind of getting back to what we saw from De'Aaron Fox for the past couple of years, and what we've seen in Sacramento, really going back to the DeMarcus Cousins, period, where one player is literally putting a team on its back and just doing what he can every night. Never seen anything like this before. Not even then, obviously. So I think it's a special time, one that I think that De'Aaron Fox and the Kings would rather not have to go through, which is having De'Aaron Fox be their focal point on offense every single possession. But seeing 109 points over 24 hours is a reminder that he's a very special player.
And the fact, Frankie, that they actually got a win. I mean, I know everybody's kind of bummed that they didn't get the win when he scored 60, but the amount of personnel that was missing, specifically really Saturday, to still get the split, I know it's not the best result, but it could have been a lot worse, and they're going to play likely again without a lot of firepower tonight, and not now knowing they don't play till Friday. So they might need De'Aaron to do this maybe one more time tonight. Yeah,
it does seem like, it's not coincidence that they have 3-4 off days after tonight's game. And, all accounts what I've been hearing is that the injuries that were suffered are not serious. I think that if it was the quote unquote, if it was a playoff game, X player would play. I think that for some of those guys, it definitely would be the case. But that doesn't change the fact that it's early in the year. And this is a team that has played its starters the most minutes out of any team in the league right now. I think I come on every week and say that, 3 or 4 players are included in the NBA's top 10 minutes list. I think right now they're down to 2, which is better than last week. I think they had 4 last week. So they're getting.
Just 2 of them are hurt.
2 of them are hurt. Exactly. But hey, Dave, you take the wins where you take the wins here.
Right.
They're getting rest and recovering early at an early point in the year. I mean, this isn't March, February, March, where they're in the thick of the playoff race. It's November. So having guys that are dealing with nagging issues this is the time to kind of deal with it. And De'Aaron Fox, we know as well, is not 100% healthy. He's been pretty open about the fact that he's playing through a finger/hand injury, something that he said will not heal if he has, a month of downtime, I think is the quote he's been saying. That's not going to happen. And we're seeing him having to work more and more. So I think it's coming at a good time, and maybe we could see some of those players start coming back one by one, or maybe a couple on Friday. But it is just kind of something that you look at and say, this is what they have, and they're still they're finding a way to get it done with what they have. And kind of a tip of the cap to Mike Brown, who I think has also been under fire for his rotations and still has to work through a lot when his main guys come back. But he pieced it together the other night against Utah, and with some rotations that kind of were wild to see in real time, and ones that probably shouldn't be seen a lot going forward in the season. Otherwise, there'll be some real problems. But he made it work, and he might have to do it again one more time tonight.
Frankie, unfair to connect the top 4 in minutes with 40% of your starting lineup being out for back issues?
I mean, I think it definitely influences it somewhat. I mean, I think that, but at the same time, it's like, this is what they have, and that's the problem. They're having to play these guys 40 plus minutes per game in these tight games. And that doesn't help also that they've played a lot of tight games so far early this year, and they've had to keep going back to Sabonis and back to DeRozan, have Fox play heavy minutes. Keegan Murray seems like he hasn't come off the floor all year. That has to do a lot with the fact that they're in close games, but also, like we continue to talk about, the main issue is the depth of this roster. It's not where it needs to be a true playoff contender, one that hopefully this team hopes can go past the first round for the first time in 20 years. I feel like the current depth right now just is not there. And we get reminded of that every given night. So tonight will be the latest reminder when we see, players, and it's nothing against them, but seeing players like Isaac Jones or Orlando Robinson, Jordan McLaughlin, I think, who can play a key piece for this team at some point. He had a big shot the other night, but you want to have your main guys playing, but not 40 plus minutes per game. And you want to have a stronger sense of depth with it, which I think will have to be addressed before February's trade deadline.
So, Frankie, I know the last couple of weeks between you or whether we're talking to Brendan, we've talked about those two issues being the biggest so far have been depth concerns or bench play, let's say, and shooting. And shooting has been a problem, but lately it's been better. Is this, kind of a market correction, or what do you think? Or what is your thought process on now how they've shot better the last couple of games?
Yeah, I think it's kind of starting to sway towards that market correction type of fix. They're 43% over the past 3 games, and that happens when you have players like Kevin Huerter, who's been knocking down shots, Trey Lyles, who's been the Trey Lyles I think a lot of us been accustomed to the past 2 years. He's averaging 13 points per game on 44% from 3 over the past 5 games. So that's more of the Trey Lyles that the Kings fans are used to seeing, and that's a huge part of the bench when you have this current group as is. Your starting 5 has been great, but you really only are getting production out of Malik Monk in that second unit, and even he was a little shaky to begin the year. He wasn't in his true form from last year or the year prior. So you really need to have someone step up in that second unit, and Trey Lyles has been doing that for the Kings. And credit to him, credit to Jordan McLaughlin, who, like I mentioned a second ago, what ended up being the go ahead or maybe game winning shot, that corner 3 late against Utah. He's picked it up in light of these injuries too. So I think the 3-point shooting, to me, was always going to be there. They have too many good shooters, and we'll see if Keegan Murray can figure it out. He really has been someone, since even going back to last year, has not really been the 3-point shooter that he was in his first year. Playing a different type of basketball, obviously. He's not just a spot up, strictly DHO type of player anymore. He's trying to kind of create on his own sometimes. So he's still kind of on that learning curve, but they have a lot of good shooters. De'Aaron Fox shooting the basketball well the past couple of games too, obviously. 6 of 10 from 3 on Friday, 3 of 4 on Saturday. So to me, they're going to be there right now, 25th in 3-point shooting percentage. But I still look at them as a middle of the pack 3-point shooting team and a dominant paint team.
When we look at De'Aaron Fox's performance on Friday, that's 60 points. I want to look at it as a lot of people got out of the way for him. But I think it would be unfair also not to say, guys, where are you? Sabonis played 40 minutes. And by the way, I'm not criticizing. 23 and 14 doesn't suck, or 23 and 12. Keegan 14 and 10. But you had, 4 points from Huerter. You had okay contributions off the bench. I know we want to focus on the good with De'Aaron Fox, but did the teammates let him down on Friday?
If you want to look at it that way, I guess they did somewhat. They didn't get much out of Kevin Huerter. They didn't get enough out of Keegan Murray. They didn't get enough out of Keon Ellis's minutes, who had a pretty tough game that night. And I think you can look at the fact that they're playing an elite defense and really 2 elite defenders. Granted, 2 defenders that Fox didn't have any trouble with, but that's not an excuse to having anyone else kind of pick it up and contribute a little more in crunch time. It really was De'Aaron Fox or nothing. And that's something that we've seen a lot over the years, not as much in recent years, but definitely not this year. With having DeMar DeRozan, who really has put the Kings on his back in these kind of late game situations more so, De'Aaron got even pretty quick in those fourth quarter point statistics and over the past couple of games. I can't remember what he had in the fourth quarter on Friday. I think it was around 20 points. He had 13 the other night against Utah. It's kind of just back to that situation where if it's not going to be De'Aaron Fox, who is it going to be? That player, if it's not DeMar DeRozan on the floor, has yet to establish himself. Again, you kind of look at the fact that it's Fox, Malik Monk, and DeMar DeRozan. Those are kind of your guys who are those ISO ball late game scorers, or guys that can kind of self-create at the end of games. You're down 2 of them. So when you don't have either of those guys alongside Fox, it really is kind of, can Fox create? Can you get into the paint? Can you free up a shooter enough to get open? And even that's him creating that scenario. So they need some help in these situations, and hopefully this isn't a roster that will look the same come Friday in Los Angeles. Hopefully you get guys like DeRozan and Sabonis back. I know Malik needs probably one more week before they can see where he's at and put him through practice or workouts. But having even one of those players back at this point would be huge because, the Kings aren't used to playing many games without Domantas Sabonis, and that's been De'Aaron Fox's, partner in crime the past 2+ seasons. So different look, and they're trying to kind of figure it out on the fly.
Frank, yeah, back to De'Aaron too on the 2-game stretch, the 60, then the 49. And Dave said this earlier, and I think he's right. Like, I don't know how any other way to put it. It wasn't in a sense where De'Aaron got the 60 because, man, he made 14 threes and was doing stuff we've never seen him do. It all felt very much like any other game De'Aaron did. It just was supersized in the fact that he continued to score and he continued to get to the foul line, but he didn't do anything in my mind besides the absurd number that we haven't seen him do. So how can he still become that spectacular player when DeRozan is back, when Sabonis is back, and getting all the best of all of them, knowing that, De'Aaron at times can crank it up and go for close to 50, if not 60.
I mean, it's just a matter of kind of finding that fit with that offense. And De'Aaron Fox's assist numbers are very high to begin the year. I think he had a couple double-doubles, which double-doubles really aren't De'Aaron Fox's game. He's capable of doing them, but usually he's trying to score the ball so much that it just kind of takes away those assist opportunities. But I think to be honest, he needs to show more, which is crazy to say when DeRozan and Sabonis are on the floor. I think Fox needs to kind of take more initiative to take his own shots when he's feeling like he's rolling. I think that he is a good teammate, a good team player, and he's finding DeRozan, who it's paid off. DeRozan's a 23, 24 point per game scorer so far this year, and someone who's been, one of the main reasons why they're 8-6 right now. But Fox is showing that he's able to get to those spots, specifically in the mid-range and the paint. That's one thing that he really did a great job of the other night. He mentioned against Utah, he didn't take a three in the second half. He kind of went with what was working, which was getting into the paint. He's so creative with that mid-range jumper and freeing himself up, getting to the free throw line. He wasn't settling for threes, which I think a lot of people yell and clamor for not to settle for threes. Just because Fox has become a respectable 3-point shooter doesn't mean he should take away what's most valuable of his game, which is getting into the paint, which is using his quickness to get free. We saw him toy around with Colin Sexton the other night. There's a video that's been circulating of that one play where he just did whatever he wanted to get Sexton in the air and draw the foul. Not many players in the NBA can do that. I know we've seen the James Hardens, which we've all talked about how excruciating it is to watch those old Sixers games when it was Harden and Embiid on the same team. But those are the type of players who are MVP winning, all-star level type talents who can demand that attention from the defense. DeMar DeRozan is another player who can do that. So I think it's going to be a matter of Fox just taking those situations into his own hands and, having an understanding among the offense that maybe it's DeRozan's night, maybe it's Fox's night, but, there's going to be spots for each of those players, which, is going to be something they have to navigate. But it's a good problem to have. You have two of the clutchest late game scorers in the game right now, and they both have been playing at a high level when they're on the floor this year.
And is that really kind of where it falls on Mike Brown as being the maybe most important part of this team? We've talked about it from the beginning, and you just said it. Some nights it's DeRozan's night, sometimes it's Fox's night, and that's fine because sometimes it's Tatum's night and sometimes it's Jaylen Brown's night, and they just won a championship. But Fox ain't scoring six. He's not scoring 109 in 2 games if DeRozan's playing. We know that. And if there's an upside to DeRozan being out, it's that it clearly frees up the offense to do some things they don't normally do. Now, can Fox and DeRozan alternate and not lose Keegan and Herter and Sabonis in the mix? Does Mike Brown have to do a better job? I shouldn't say better job, but does Mike Brown have to sort out having 2 superstar style scorers on the team, but also making sure that maybe a guy like Domantas Sabonis is the one that's the focal point of running the offense?
Yeah, I mean, that's something they're going to have to figure out. And I think we only saw, 9 games, I think, of this full roster before DeRozan went down and Monk went down. So that's the hard part. There's not much time to practice and work these things out on the fly. This week actually is going to be a huge week for the Kings because I know that they're planning on, I think Mike mentioned them probably taking a day off again tomorrow, which they probably should, having guys like DeRozan and Sabonis going through injuries, Fox with his hand. So I think that's something they're going to have to work throughout the course of the season. But we're talking about nearing the game 20 mark, a quarter of a season gone, where they're going to have Malik Monk, everybody back, knocking on wood here about nothing else popping up. But that's something they have to figure out for sure. But also, I think that it's not really, might sound crazy. It's as simple as knocking down shots. I mean, a lot of guys like Keegan Murray they've had a lot of open looks. Kevin Huerter, who has been, streaky, as many shooters are, but streaky to begin the year, settling in a little bit here. But to me, it seems like they're getting a lot of good looks, and they're just not knocking them down for the most part. Keon Ellis, Trey Lyles, that bench unit has been super inconsistent so far. So I think that we haven't really seen the full form of this Kings team yet, which is good, or it could be scary because they could be in a situation where it's later in the year and you have to hit the ripcord pretty quick and figure things out, very quickly when we're talking about the deadline in February. But they have the weapons to be effective. They have the offense to be effective. The defense even is in the top half of the league this year. There's a lot of good here. The main issue really is the 3-point shooting. And like I said, I do think that's going to level out. And the larger issue, the more glaring issue, the rotation, it should be resolved by February. And if it's not, we're going to be seeing these guys continue to play a lot of minutes.
Frank, you want to ask you about just kind of where they are schedule-wise, too. I mean, it's been quirky. This whole homestand is playing a team that they've already played, like tonight. They're going to play the Hawks again for the second time, so they'll be done with them. They've already finished with Toronto. That was the second game with the Jazz. They've played Minnesota a couple times. They played Phoenix twice. It's been a little bit weird here at the beginning of the season. So kind of with all that, paired with all the stuff we've said, what is your thoughts on this matchup tonight with Atlanta that had won a couple in a row before losing last night? They're on the second night of a back-to-back. So what do you think about Kings and Hawks tonight?
Yeah, there's been a little bit of balance there. I kind of was looking at that too, the fact that it does seem like they're trying to mix around them back-to-backs better. And, that weird trip the Kings did have, though, from Atlanta to, or was it Toronto back to Atlanta? Just, the geographic standpoint. I mean, I know the flights are short and people are mapping that out, but the travel's been weird. But looking at Atlanta, last game of a 4-game homestand, the Kings have been, putting a lot of emphasis on playing at home this year. And they go on a brief road trip and then come back. So it's a matchup that we're looking at 2 top 5 paint defense teams here. The Kings, I think it's surprising, which surprised me this morning to find they're top 5 in points in the paint defense per game. Atlanta's right there with them, but that's the Clint Capella effect, who isn't, defensive player of the year type of a talent, but a guy who can really kind of, get in there and make people uncomfortable. Fox is going to be someone who's going to have to probably take 25 plus shots again tonight. So I wonder if he's going to be looking to attack the paint or settle more for those 3 that we talked about. But it's a team that can definitely get going at any time. They have Trey Young, someone who is in a similar position where they're dealing with some injuries and he's seeing some more volume. Doesn't look like Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to be a player tonight for them, but it's an easy look at this game and say a game in a team that the Kings should beat. But this is obviously everything's out the door with this current Kings roster with DeRozan and Monk and Sabonis probably not playing. So kind of looking at it as I looked at the Utah game, see what Mike Brown can do with this rotation, see who can step up this time around. And it might take another 40-plus night from Fox, but hopefully for his sake it won't, and he can get more of a collective effort from who's on the floor tonight. But I still look at it as a game the Kings should win. They can't really turn their nose up at any kind of competition this year just because of injuries. A lot of teams are currently dealing with injuries, but the schedule as a whole doesn't look like it's been too grueling from a matchup standpoint, and that's something the Kings should take advantage of.
Soon to be Father Frank joining us week in and week out. Sactown Sports Kings Insider. Appreciate you, Frankie. Have fun at the game tonight. Let's get a win and light the beam, brother.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care. That is our Frankie Cartoscelli. We'll take a break. When we come back, 4 down territory. Best week, worst week, team, individual. We've also got Steven on line 1. Your phone calls at 1-800-912-1140. And an idea from MC in the chat line that I'm just not quite sure about. We'll need to run it through the showocracy. We'll get to that all next.
Join Sacramento State football this Saturday at 2 for the Causeway Classic versus UC Davis. Get your tickets at HornetSports.com.
On the move, got so